Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world that feels as old as the mountains themselves, a realm shrouded in mist and forgotten echoes. Imagine dust motes dancing in the faint light filtering through ancient, crumbling tapestries, the scent of damp earth and distant, cold iron clinging to the air. You're there, now, not as an observer, but as a silent, armored figure, your boots scuffing on cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of sorrow. The wind whispers through broken archways, carrying tales of a once proud kingdom now on the brink, its people holding their breath, waiting for a dawn that may never come. You're a lone warrior, a shadow against the dying light, and frankly, you probably won't survive this. But hey, it's a story for sleep, so at least you'll go out like a legend, right? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always wild to think about us all connecting across time zones. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the weight of destiny settle upon your shoulders, a cloak heavier than any mail shirt you've ever donned. You are the knight without a name, and frankly, that's not exactly helpful for getting a table at a busy tavern, is it? Yet, your anonymity is your strength, a blank slate upon which the desperate hopes of a dying realm are about to be scribbled. You stride through the twilight, the rhythmic clink of your armor the only sound in the oppressive silence. The air here, in the outer fringes of the kingdom of Eldoria, is thick with a melancholy that settles deep in your bones, like the persistent ache of an old wound. You notice the abandoned homesteads, their roofs caved in, chimneys standing like broken teeth against the fading sky. Smoke no longer curls from them, and the faint scent of ash tells a story of sudden abandonment, not gradual decline. This isn't just a kingdom in distress, it's a kingdom actively fading, like an ancient manuscript left out in the rain. Historically, during periods of widespread famine or plague, entire villages would often be abandoned, sometimes with very little warning, leading to ghost towns that would remain uninhabited for centuries. You can almost hear the frantic goodbyes, the desperate scramble for meager possessions. It makes you wonder, was it fear that drove them away, or something far more sinister? There's a subtle chill in the air, different from the evening coolness. It's the kind of cold that seems to seep into your soul, a premonition of something truly dire. You pass a gnarled, ancient oak, its branches skeletal against the pale moon, and you notice a curious detail, a single, perfectly preserved raven's feather, jet black, impaled into the bark with a shard of obsidian. It's a quirky tidbit, this, as if some unseen hand left a calling card. Who would take the time for such a precise, symbolic act in a world crumbling around them? It feels less like a warning and more like a signpost, a deliberate, unsettling piece of cosmic graffiti. You continue, your gaze sweeping across the desolate landscape. The fields lie fallow, choked with weeds, the skeletal remains of what were once bountiful harvests. It reminds you of old paintings, where the artist deliberately leaves parts of the canvas unfinished to evoke a sense of decay. And this realm, Eldoria, feels unfinished, perpetually caught in a moment of agonizing transition. Historians still argue whether the decline of many great medieval kingdoms was primarily due to external invasions, internal strife, or a complex interplay of environmental factors and disease. Here, you feel it's all of the above, amplified by an unseen force that siphons the very essence of life from the land. You reach the crest of a low hill, and below, shrouded in a thin, persistent mist, lies what remains of Eldoria's capital. It's not quite a ruin, not yet, but it wears its decay like a heavy shroud. And you, the knight without a name, are stepping directly into the heart of its quiet agony. As you descend into the valley, the mist thickens, clinging to your armor like a shroud. The capital, once a bustling hub of trade and merriment, now feels like a set piece for a forgotten play, draped in silence. You pass through what must have been the outer market district. Stalls stand empty, their awnings tattered, resembling skeletal wings in the dim light. A wooden cart lies overturned, its wheels motionless, as if frozen mid-journey. There's no debris of a struggle, no discarded wares, just an eerie, precise emptiness that speaks volumes about whatever befell this place. It's almost too neat, like a horror movie where the monster tidies up after itself. You step onto the main thoroughfare, and the grand architecture of Eldoria looms around you, solemn and imposing. Ornate carvings of heroic knights and mythical beasts adorn the facades of once magnificent buildings, now scarred by neglect and the persistent damp. But their grandeur is overshadowed by a pervasive sense of abandonment. Even the air feels heavier here, thick with the weight of unspoken grief. You instinctively reach for the hilt of your sword, not out of immediate threat, but from a primal urge to grasp something solid, something real, in this surreal decay. The silence is punctuated only by the soft echo of your own footsteps, a sound that seems to reverberate through the very stones of the city. You notice a detail often overlooked in the grand tapestries depicting medieval life, the surprisingly efficient, if sometimes odorous, sewage systems that ran beneath many major cities. Even here, in the capital's heart, you can discern the faint, earthy scent of ancient drains, a quirky tidbit that reminds you of the mundane realities of even the most fantastical realms. It's a testament to the ingenuity of a people who, despite believing in dragons and prophecies, still needed to manage their waste. You pass a fountain in the central plaza, its basin dry, the once gleaming statue of a benevolent king now streaked with grime and lichen. It's a stark reminder of how quickly even the mightiest legacies can crumble. You consider that the fall of Eldoria wasn't a sudden cataclysm, but a slow, agonizing process, like a prolonged illness. Historians still argue whether slow societal declines are more devastating than sudden, violent collapses, as the former often breed a deeper, more insidious despair. Here, you feel the latter. The despair is palpable, a cold, heavy blanket over everything. As you draw closer to the heart of the city, a low, guttural growl rips through the stillness. It's not the snarl of a beast, but something far more unsettling, a sound that vibrates in your chest cavity, a distorted echo of ancient pain. You brace yourself, your senses heightened. A gust of wind whips through a narrow alleyway, carrying with it the faint, metallic tang of ozone and something else, something cloyingly sweet, like withered roses. You'd think an apocalypse would smell more like brimstone and desperation, but no, it's roses, which is just typical, isn't it? Always got to keep you on your toes. Suddenly, a shimmer in the air, a distortion of light like heat haze rising from a summer road. From the depths of the shadows, a spectral figure materializes. It's vaguely humanoid, composed of swirling, dark mist, but with 2 points of glowing, malevolent red light where its eyes should be. This isn't a physical entity you can simply cleave with your sword, it's something else entirely, something born of the realm's suffering. It hovers, silent, its form wavering like smoke, blocking your path to what must be the king's keep. The realm's despair has taken on a physical form, a truly terrible kind of existential dread. You realize your fight won't just be against a physical foe, but against the very essence of Eldoria's fading spirit. The spectral guard doesn't move, doesn't even make a sound now, just hovers there, a silent, swirling vortex of despair-given form. You feel its gaze, those malevolent red pinpricks, boring into your very soul. It's not just observing you, it's assessing you, probing for weaknesses, trying to unravel the threads of your composure. This is less a physical confrontation and more a test of wills, like trying to stare down a particularly stubborn cloud. You could try to charge through it, but something in your gut tells you that would be spectacularly ill-advised, probably resulting in you becoming one with the mist, and that's not exactly a good look for a hero, is it? You can almost taste the desperation emanating from it, a bitter, metallic tang on your tongue. It's the crystallized grief of Eldoria, given teeth. Historically, many cultures believed in spectral guardians, often bound to ancient places or tasked with protecting sacred knowledge, though usually they were less gooey. The folklore around them is a quirky tidbit, ranging from benevolent spirits to terrifying apparitions, but rarely does one hear of a ghost that feels like a particularly bad mood made manifest. This one, though, feels like the embodiment of every Monday morning dread you've ever experienced, but with glowing red eyes. You decide against a direct assault. Instead, you do something unexpected, you speak. Your voice, low and calm, cuts through the oppressive silence. What do you guard, spirit? What truth do you keep hidden? Your words hang in the air, seemingly absorbed by the spectral form. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, the swirling mist of its body intensifies, and a faint, almost imperceptible whisper unfurls from it, like cobwebs caught on a breeze. It's not a language you understand, but you feel the meaning of it, a wave of ancient sorrow and warning washing over you. The message is clear. Albeit wordless, you cannot pass this way. The truth you seek will shatter you. It's a classic heroic trope, isn't it? The ominous warning from the ethereal gatekeeper. You almost expect it to add, and we've tried to reach you about your armor's extended warranty. But there's no humor in its presence, only the profound weight of its purpose. Historians still argue whether the concept of spiritual guardians in various mythologies stemmed from genuine perceived phenomena or served as a powerful narrative device to instill awe and fear in ancient populations. Here, though, it feels undeniably real, undeniably potent. You realize that engaging this entity on its own terms, the terms of despair and resignation, is a losing battle. You need to introduce something else into the equation. You remember a lesson from your sparse, self-taught studies: some spiritual entities, particularly those tied to human emotion, can be dispersed not by force, but by a counter-emotion, a strong, pure feeling that clashes with their very essence. Hope, perhaps? Or defiance? You choose defiance. You draw your sword, not with the intention to strike, but to make a declaration. The steel, though dulled by your journey, catches the faint ambient light, a tiny beacon in the encroaching gloom. You hold it steady, pointing the tip not at the spirit, but upwards, towards the unseen sky beyond the city's oppressive canopy. I will not be deterred, you state, your voice firmer now, echoing slightly in the hollowed-out streets. This realm dies if I falter. My purpose is greater than your despair. As you speak, something shifts. The spectral guard shimmers more violently, as if your words are causing it pain, or perhaps, irritation. The red pinpricks of its eyes flicker, momentarily dimming. It's a sign, a tiny crack in its formidable facade. You feel a surge of energy, not your own, but something drawn from the very intention behind your words. It's almost like hitting the reset button on a particularly grumpy old computer. A low, keening sound, like wind whistling through a tomb, emanates from the spirit, and its form begins to fray at the edges. Not dissipating entirely, but shrinking, condensing, as if recoiling from the sheer audacity of your resolve. You've found its off switch, or at least its snooze button. The spectral guardian, diminished but not entirely gone, swirls into a tighter, denser mass, like a very moody dust bunny, and retreats into the deepest shadows of the King's Keep entrance. It leaves behind a lingering chill and the faint scent of ozone, a polite reminder that it's still very much around and probably plotting its revenge during its ghost nap. You push open the colossal, iron-bound doors of the keep. They groan on ancient hinges, a sound like 1,000 forgotten sorrows sighing in unison. Inside, the silence is even more profound, if that's possible. It's the silence of a place that once teemed with life, now utterly bereft. Dust motes dance in the slivers of weak moonlight filtering through high, arched windows, illuminating long, empty corridors. The air is cold, stale, and thick with the smell of old stone and decay. It's like walking into a museum after closing hours, except instead of priceless artifacts, you're surrounded by the ghosts of a kingdom's last breaths. You half expect a tour guide to pop out and say, and to your left, you'll see the throne room where absolutely no one is currently sitting. You find yourself in the grand hall, where once, undoubtedly, feasts were held, decrees were read, and bored courtiers probably played a medieval version of I Spy. Tapestries, once vibrant, now hang in tattered strips, their colors faded to somber browns and grays. They depict scenes of Eldoria's glory days, valiant knights, bountiful harvests, and smiling, prosperous folk. The contrast with the present reality is a punch to the gut. It makes you wonder how quickly prosperity can vanish, like a particularly good Wi-Fi signal. As you move deeper into the keep, you notice the exquisite craftsmanship of the architecture. Even in ruin, the skill of the ancient masons is evident. Historically, medieval cathedrals and castles were often built with incredible precision and artistry, designed not just for function but also to inspire awe and demonstrate power. This attention to detail, even in utilitarian structures, is a quirky tidbit that often gets overlooked in our rush to imagine the dirtier Middle Ages. These folks knew how to build, and they built to last, which is why you're still trudging through their dusty hallways 1,000 years later. You pass through several chambers, each one more desolate than the last. The royal chambers, the treasury, emptied, of course, the war room with maps long disintegrated into dust. It feels as though the very essence of the royal line has simply evaporated. Historians still argue whether the decline of specific royal houses in the medieval era was more often due to weak leadership, dynastic struggles, or external pressures. Here, it feels like the realm itself just gave up, and the royal family simply followed suit. You reach a circular chamber at the very heart of the keep, undoubtedly the place where the oracle is said to reside. The chamber is unadorned, save for a single, raised dais in the center. On the dais, shrouded in an ethereal glow, sits a figure. It's difficult to tell if it's truly ancient or merely appears so due to some arcane magic. The Oracle of Eldoria. She is hunched, her form obscured by layers of dark cloth, her face a mass of wrinkles that seem to tell 1,000 stories. Her eyes, however, are startlingly bright, luminous with an inner light that pierces the gloom of the chamber. As you step fully into the room, those ancient eyes fix on you, and you feel an involuntary shiver race down your spine. There's no greeting, no polite introductions, just the weight of her gaze, stripping away your defenses, probing the very core of your being. You can almost hear her thinking, another one. They always come here eventually. The oracle doesn't speak, not in a way you'd recognize, anyway. Instead, a voice, ancient and resonant, seems to bloom within your mind, a chorus of whispers that somehow forms coherent thought. You seek answers, night without a name, the voice echoes, but sometimes, answers are heavier than the questions that birthed them. It's less like a conversation and more like a download directly into your brain, which, let's be honest, is a pretty efficient way to communicate, even if it feels a bit intrusive. You sense the immense age of this being, a longevity that defies natural explanation. Historically, many cultures revered oracles and seers, often believing them to possess a divine connection or access to knowledge beyond mortal ken. Think of the Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece. People would travel for weeks, bringing offerings, just for a cryptic utterance. This oracle, though, feels less like a priestess and more like a living library of a dying world. It's a quirky tidbit to consider. How much knowledge could one mind hold over centuries, especially if it's mostly bad news? The chamber, though simple, seems to hum with an arcane energy, and you realize the dais isn't just a seat, it's a focal point, drawing power from the very ley lines of Eldoria. You feel a subtle disorientation, as if the fabric of reality around you is thinning. This is not just a person, this is a conduit. Historians still argue whether ancient prophecies were self-fulfilling, carefully manipulated political tools, or genuine attempts to predict the future through mystical means. With this oracle, you get the distinct impression that her predictions are less about telling the future and more about reflecting the current state of despair, projecting its inevitable conclusion unless something drastically changes. The realm withers, the oracle's voice in your mind continues, a sorrowful lament. The Shadow King's blight spreads, not through force of arms, but through the erosion of hope. He feeds on despair, and Eldoria has offered a grand feast. You flinch internally at the words Shadow King. It sounds less like a medieval monarch and more like a villain from a particularly gloomy Saturday morning cartoon. But the oracle's words carry the undeniable ring of truth, a cold, hard fact that settles in your gut. Then, the prophecy. It isn't delivered in flowery verse, but in stark, almost brutal imagery, projected directly into your mind's eye. You see a vision of Eldoria, once vibrant, now a skeletal husk. Rivers run black, forests turn to petrified wood, and the sun itself is a dull, bruised orb in a sky filled with perpetual twilight. You see the Shadow King, a figure of pure obsidian and malice, seated on a throne of twisted roots, his laughter echoing through the emptiness. It's a terrifying, visceral experience, like watching a really bad infomercial for the end of the world. But then, a glimmer. The vision shifts. You see a single, fragile sprout pushing through barren earth. A sliver of moonlight pierces the gloom, touching a forgotten artifact, a shard of crystal pulsating with a soft, warm light. And finally, you see yourself, or rather, a blurred figure in similar armor, standing against the encroaching darkness, holding that artifact. The vision fades, leaving you breathless, the air in the chamber suddenly feeling too thin. The relic of sundered light, the oracle's voice explains, is the only counter to his encroaching shadow. It lies in the sunken city of Athos, guarded by the very despair it once fought. Retrieve it, knight. And then, face the heart of the shadow. The oracle's eyes, those brilliant pinpricks of light, seem to bore into you, a silent command. You realize this isn't a request, it's a destiny laid bare. And, for the record, going on a treasure hunt to a sunken city sounds incredibly inconvenient. For armor. Just saying. With the oracle's ominous words echoing in your mind, you turn from the keep, the silence behind you feeling heavier than before. The path ahead is clear, albeit daunting, the sunken city of Athos. As you emerge from the capital, the familiar oppressive atmosphere returns, but now it carries a new weight, the weight of purpose, however grim. You retrace your steps through the decaying streets, the spectral guardian mercifully absent, perhaps still processing the sheer audacity of your defiance. The journey to Athos takes you through what must have once been the fertile farmlands of Eldoria. Now, they are desolate, the earth cracked and barren, resembling a vast, forgotten canvas. You pass fields where rows of crops should be, but instead, twisted, skeletal weeds claw at the sky. The occasional skeleton of a farm animal lies scattered, picked clean, a stark reminder of the widespread desolation. It's a landscape that screams abandoned, even louder than your high school yearbook. You learn quickly to travel by twilight, when the oppressive heat of the day subsides and the risk of encountering stray, despair-ridden creatures is slightly lessened. You become intimately familiar with the rhythm of the dying land, the way the wind sighs through the empty spaces, carrying the phantom scent of what once was. Historically, traveling long distances in the medieval period was fraught with peril, from bandits to wild animals, and often required meticulous planning for supplies and shelter. You, however, are winging it, relying on sheer stubbornness and the occasional stale biscuit you find in your pack. One evening, you stumble upon what looks like an ancient, abandoned well. Its stone rim is overgrown with moss, and the air around it is surprisingly cool. As you peer inside, you notice a peculiar shimmer at the bottom. It's not water. It's light, faint but undeniable. A quirky tidbit, ancient wells were sometimes used as places to dispose of ritualistic offerings, or even as secret caches during times of war. You lower a stone on a string, and as it descends, the light pulsates. Curiosity gets the better of you, and you rappel down. At the bottom, nestled among ancient roots, you find a small, beautifully crafted silver locket. It's empty, but the metal still feels warm, as if someone's hope was recently poured into it. You take it, a small, unexplained comfort in this desolate world. As you trek onward, the terrain begins to change. The land dips, and the air grows noticeably damp, carrying the briny scent of long stagnant water. You realize you are approaching the basin where Athos lies. Historians still argue whether some lost cities of antiquity were truly lost to natural disasters like floods, or if their abandonment was a more gradual process driven by economic decline or shifting trade routes. For Athos, the oracle's vision implied a more mystical, despair-driven inundation, which is considerably harder to explain away with erosion data. Finally, after days of solitary travel, you stand on a low bluff overlooking a vast, shimmering expanse. It's not a lake, not entirely. It's a basin filled with murky, still water, and beneath its opaque surface, you can vaguely discern the outlines of towering structures. This is Athos, the sunken city. The sight is both magnificent and tragic, like seeing a grand cathedral swallowed by a swamp. The water itself seems to possess an unnatural stillness, reflecting the bruised sky like a distorted mirror. You descend to the water's edge. The silence here is profound, broken only by the faint, rhythmic lapping of the water against unseen obstacles. You notice that the ancient road leading into the city disappears directly into the water, a silent invitation to an underwater graveyard. Your armor feels heavier than ever at the thought of plunging into those depths. You're a knight, not a deep-sea diver, and you really hope there aren't any mythical, armor-chomping fish down there. Standing at the murky edge of the sunken city, you consider your options. You're clad in heavy steel, designed for horseback and sword fights, not for exploring ancient, submerged ruins. It's a bit like showing up to a swimming competition in a tuxedo. you sigh, a faint metallic sound from within your helmet. There's no turning back, of course. The oracle's prophecy wasn't a suggestion, it was more like a cosmic to-do list. The water, though still, looks impossibly deep, reflecting the bruised sky above with an unsettling fidelity. You take a moment, mentally bracing yourself for the plunge. Historically, divers in ancient and medieval times had rudimentary equipment, often just holding their breath or using simple diving bells for short periods. You, however, are relying purely on your stubbornness and perhaps a tiny bit of plot armor. You take a deep breath, and with a splash that echoes eerily across the silent water, you step into the gloom. The cold hits you immediately, a shocking embrace that seeps through your armor. You sink slowly, the water clinging to you, pulling you down. The visibility is poor, the light filtering through the murky depths barely illuminating your immediate surroundings. You rely on your other senses, feeling the cold currents, hearing the faint creak of ancient timbers carried by the water. It's an oddly serene descent, despite the inherent danger. As you go deeper, the outlines of buildings become clearer. You can discern the skeletal remains of what were once grand homes, shops, and public squares, all swallowed by the relentless water. Fish, pale and ghost-like, dart through shattered windows and archways, their movements the only sign of life in this submerged graveyard. It's a haunting spectacle, a city frozen in time, preserved by its watery tomb. You pass a statue, its features eroded by time and current, yet still recognizable as a queen, her stone hand outstretched as if still offering solace to her lost people. It's a quirky tidbit, the sea, despite its destructive power, can also be an incredible preserver, like a giant, liquid time capsule. You find yourself navigating through what must have been the city's main thoroughfare. The sensation of moving through water, even with your armor, is surprisingly fluid, a bizarre dance between grace and resistance. You push through doorways and descend staircases that now lead only deeper into the gloom. The silence is profound, broken only by the rhythmic bubble of your own breath, a stark contrast to the cacophony of a living city. It's almost meditative, if you can ignore the constant threat of something unexpected lurking in the shadows. You notice something unusual about the water itself. It has a faint, shimmering quality, almost like moonlight trapped in liquid. And sometimes, you catch glimpses of faint, ethereal lights dancing in the distance, like fireflies beneath the sea. These are the remnants of Athos's despair, the oracle had warned, given form. They are the same kind of spectral entities you encountered in the capital, only here, they are diluted, diffused by the water, more like mournful echoes than active threats. Still, you keep a wary eye on them, as they tend to gravitate towards areas of significant emotional residue. Historians still argue whether legends of underwater cities, like Atlantis, were based on real geological events, exaggerated tales of coastal settlements, or purely mythical constructs. Here, in Athos, you feel the tangible reality of a once vibrant civilization lost to an unseen force. It feels less like a natural disaster and more like a deliberate act of drowning, a city overwhelmed not by a literal tide, but by the overwhelming sorrow of its inhabitants. You press onward, your internal compass guiding you towards the deepest part of the city, where the oracle indicated the relic of sundered light was hidden. The pressure in your ears increases with every meter, a constant reminder of the immense weight of the water above you. And you wonder, just for a moment, if the weight of Eldoria's fate will be just as crushing. Deeper you go, into the heart of the sunken city, the light fading to an oppressive gloom that even your nightly resilience struggles against. The ethereal wisps of despair, the silent, mournful echoes of Athos, seem to grow more numerous here, drifting past you like translucent jellyfish. They're harmless, mostly, but their presence is a constant, chilling reminder of the suffering that drowned this place. You're essentially swimming through a giant, underwater sad factory, which is, not exactly ideal for morale. You navigate through what must have been the royal district, grander buildings with more intricate carvings and taller spires, all now submerged. The water pressure here is immense, a constant, dull ache in your ears, a physical manifestation of the metaphorical weight of Eldoria's dying fate. Your armor feels less like a protective shell and more like a lead blanket. It's a miracle you're not instantly flattened, like a pancake at a particularly aggressive breakfast buffet. One of the more peculiar sights you encounter is a submerged garden. Skeletal remains of what were once vibrant coral formations now stand like petrified trees, their branches swaying gently with the unseen currents. Amidst them, you spot a single, perfectly preserved glass rose, glowing with a faint, internal light. It's a quirky tidbit, this, a testament to the strange beauty that can persist even in the deepest despair. You leave it untouched, a silent sentinel of lost hope. You eventually reach the deepest part of the city, where a massive, dome-like structure looms out of the gloom. It's built of an unfamiliar, dark stone, smooth and unyielding, seemingly untouched by the ravages of time or water. This must be the vault, the chamber where the relic of sundered light is hidden. It feels less like a building and more like a sleeping leviathan, radiating an ancient, dormant power. Historically, vaults and crypts in medieval times were often designed to be incredibly secure, built with thick stone, iron doors, and sometimes even booby traps to protect their contents. This underwater version seems to be taking secure to a whole new level. As you approach the entrance, a faint, almost imperceptible hum vibrates through the water, growing stronger with every stroke. It's the hum of pure energy, of something immensely powerful contained within. The entrance isn't a door, but a swirling vortex of slightly clearer water, almost like a portal. It looks incredibly inviting, if you're a fish. For a heavily armored knight, it just looks like a potential washing machine cycle gone terribly wrong. You steel yourself and push through the shimmering entrance. The moment you cross the threshold, the water around you changes. It becomes clearer, brighter, as if the very air itself has been purified. The pressure lessens, and the ethereal despair wisps are gone, banished by the sanctity of this place. You find yourself in a vast, spherical chamber, still submerged, but bathed in an ethereal, blue-white light that seems to emanate from the very walls. This is less like a flooded ruin and more like a sacred grotto. In the center of the chamber, suspended effortlessly in the water, floats the relic of sundered light. It's a crystal, unlike any you've ever seen. Not facete like a jewel, but smoothly polished, its surface catching and refracting the ambient light in a dazzling display. It pulses with a soft, warm glow, a stark contrast to the gloom of the outside world. It doesn't look particularly aggressive, which is a nice change of pace. As you draw closer, you notice a faint inscription on its surface, glowing faintly. You can't read the ancient script, but you feel its meaning: hope, endure, light. Historians still argue whether ancient artifacts attributed with magical properties were genuine conduits of power or merely symbolic representations that inspired belief and action. Here, seeing the crystal, you feel its power is undeniable, a raw, pure essence of what Eldoria has lost. You reach out, your gauntleted hand trembling slightly, to grasp the relic of sundered light. The moment your fingers brush its surface, a jolt of pure energy, startling but not painful, surges through you. You feel a connection, an awakening of something long dormant within you. The moment your fingers close around the relic of sundered light, an impossible warmth spreads through your gauntleted hand, searing through the chill of the deep water. The crystal vibrates gently, and a wave of pure, untainted energy washes over you. It's not a violent surge, but a gentle, pervasive hum that seems to resonate with the very core of your being. You feel lighter, stronger, as if the oppressive weight of the water, and indeed, the despair of Eldoria, has lessened. It's like finding that really good coffee shop in a new city. Suddenly, everything just clicks. With the relic clutched firmly, you push off the floor of the chamber. The return journey through Athos is remarkably different. The ethereal wisps of despair, which had seemed so pervasive before, now recoil from the relic's soft glow, shrinking into the deeper shadows. The water seems less murky, more navigable, almost as if it's parting for you. You ascend through the submerged ruins, the drowned city now appearing less like a tomb and more like a quiet, slumbering giant. It's a quirky tidbit, this, how a simple object can change your entire perception of a place. It's almost like putting on a pair of rose-tinted goggles, but for existential dread. Breaking the surface of the water, you gasp for air, the cool night wind a welcome shock after the stagnant depths. The full moon, now higher in the sky, casts a silver path across the sunken basin. You clutch the relic, its light a beacon in the gloom. You know your next destination, the enchanted forest, a place whispered about in ancient tales, a place of profound magic and bewildering illusions. Historically, deep forests in medieval folklore were often seen as boundaries between the known world and the realm of the Fae, places where magic and danger intertwined. You're about to step into one of those legends. The journey to the enchanted forest is long and arduous. You travel by night, guided by the relic's faint glow, avoiding what few remnants of civilization remain. The landscape becomes wilder, untamed, as you leave the blighted farmlands behind. The air grows cooler, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth, a welcome change from the dust and decay of the capital. You pass ancient standing stones, remnants of a forgotten people, their surfaces etched with symbols you can't decipher. Historians still argue whether such megalithic structures were primarily astronomical observatories, religious sites, or territorial markers. You, however, are just grateful they're not actively trying to eat you. As you near the forest's edge, a subtle change occurs in the atmosphere. The air shimmers faintly, like heat haze, even though the night is cool. Sounds become muffled, distant, and the path beneath your feet seems to shift, making each step uncertain. It's like walking into a particularly convincing optical illusion, but one that threatens to swallow you whole. The trees ahead are unlike any you've seen, their branches twist into unnatural, serpentine shapes, and their leaves, even in the darkness, seem to glow with a faint, otherworldly luminescence. You step across the invisible threshold into the enchanted forest, and immediately, your senses are assaulted. The air is thick with the scent of strange, potent blossoms and damp moss. A chorus of whispers, barely audible, seems to rise from the very ground, weaving through the branches. It's less like a forest and more like a living, breathing entity, one that is very much aware of your presence. The path you thought you were on vanishes behind you, swallowed by mist, leaving you disoriented. You're definitely in the labyrinth now, and you're pretty sure Google Maps isn't going to help you out here. The whispers of the enchanted forest swirl around you, growing louder, more insistent, though still incomprehensible. They seem to pluck at the edges of your mind, planting faint doubts and anxieties. The very air pulses with unseen magic, and the trees, with their twisted, glowing branches, appear to shift and writhe, as if mocking your progress. You clutch the relic tighter, its soft light a steady counterpoint to the forest's unsettling glamour. It's like walking into a particularly elaborate haunted house, but instead of jump scares, it's all psychological warfare. You try to maintain a straight line, but the forest plays tricks on your perception. Paths seem to appear and disappear, leading you in circles. The same gnarled tree, with its distinctive scar, seems to reappear before you again and again, no matter which way you turn. This kind of disorientation was often used in ancient defenses, a quirky tidbit about how cunning even simple landscapes could be. Think of the labyrinthine structures built by early civilizations, they weren't just for show, but practical traps. This forest feels like a much, much larger, organic version. Suddenly, a voice, clear and melodic, calls out from the gloom. "Lost, little knight?" it asks, dripping with a sweetness that feels entirely too cloying. From behind a curtain of glowing vines, a figure emerges. It's a being of ethereal beauty, adorned with leaves and blossoms, its eyes sparkling like dew on a spiderweb. A nymph, perhaps, or a dryad. It smiles, and though the smile is enchanting, you feel a prickle of unease. This isn't your friendly neighborhood woodland creature. This forest knows despair, the nymph purrs, circling you slowly. It feeds on sorrow, just as your Shadow King does. Why fight what is inevitable? Her words are insidious, designed to worm their way into your mind, to nurture the seeds of doubt the whispers have planted. It's a classic temptation scene, really, let's take this apple and more, why bother at all? Historians still argue whether tales of mythical forest beings, often depicted as both alluring and dangerous, were allegories for the untamed wildness of nature or reflections of deeper psychological fears. Here, you feel it's definitely the latter. You grip the relic harder, its warmth the tangible anchor in the swirling confusion. The nymph's words try to twist the oracle's prophecy, to convince you that fighting the Shadow King is a fool's errand, that surrender is the only peace. But the relic hums, countering her glamour, strengthening your resolve. You realize this is a test of your will, not your blade. You have to shut down her mental spam before it starts draining your emotional battery. I don't seek peace in surrender, you state, your voice firm despite the pervasive illusions. I seek the dawn. The nymph's enchanting smile falters. Her ethereal form flickers, briefly revealing something less beautiful beneath, a glimpse of gnawing hunger, of ancient, desperate malice. She lets out a frustrated sigh, a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone. Full, she hisses, her voice losing its sweetness, becoming sharp and brittle. The path to the Shadow King is not for the faint of heart. It leads through the whispering caves, where your deepest fears will become your tormentors. With a final, angry flourish, she melts back into the glowing foliage, leaving you alone again, but with a new direction. The path, which had been so elusive, now seems to coalesce before you, a faint, less glowing trail leading deeper into the forest. The whispers of the trees, though still present, are no longer disorienting, merely a background hum. You have overcome one illusion, but the warning about the whispering caves lingers. It sounds delightful, doesn't it? Just what you need, a cave system specifically designed to bring out your inner existential crisis. You press onward, the relic illuminating your way, your resolve hardened by the encounter. The path through the enchanted forest, now blessedly more direct, leads you toward a looming mass of dark, jagged rock, the entrance to the whispering caves. The air here is suddenly colder, devoid of the forest's sweet, cloying scents, replaced instead by the damp, earthy smell of ancient stone and the faint, metallic tang of minerals. The whispers, which had been merely disorienting in the forest, intensify here, becoming a low, continuous hum that seems to vibrate from the very rock walls. It's like stepping into a poorly insulated soundproof room, where you can still just barely hear the noisy neighbors. You approach the cavern entrance, a gaping maw in the rock face that looks less like a natural formation and more like a permanent frown. The relic in your hand glows with a steadier, more focused light, as if sensing the nature of the challenge ahead. You know this isn't just a physical maze, it's a crucible for the mind, designed to exploit the fragile edges of your psyche. Historically, caves have often been regarded as sacred or perilous places in folklore across cultures, often associated with spirits, hidden treasures, or trials of courage. The whispering caves, however, seem to specialize in making you question your life choices. As you step inside, the gloom deepens instantly. The faint external light is swallowed by the cavern's oppressive darkness, and only the relic's glow keeps you from being completely blind. The whispers, already a hum, grow louder, coalescing into indistinct voices that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere. They weave through your thoughts, preying on your deepest fears, your regrets, your moments of doubt. You hear phantom voices of those you've lost, critical words from past failures, and the persistent nagging voice that asks, "What if you're not strong enough?" It's a full-on psychological assault, and you're pretty sure it doesn't come with a helpful instruction manual. You brace yourself, trying to focus on the unwavering light of the relic. It feels like a small, warm sun in your palm, its energy a steady counterpoint to the chaotic negativity swirling around you. You recall a quirky tidbit from your own limited studies. Medieval monks sometimes practiced extreme forms of sensory deprivation to induce visions or achieve spiritual enlightenment, sometimes leading to intense hallucinations. This cave system feels like an involuntary, demonic version of that practice. The cave system itself is a labyrinth of twisting passages, narrow squeezes, and vast, echoing chambers. Stalactites drip with a monotonous rhythm, and the air is heavy with moisture. Every shadow seems to writhe, every echoing drip sounds like a whispered taunt. You see fleeting glimpses of things in your peripheral vision, dark, shapeless forms that vanish when you try to focus on them. These aren't physical monsters, they're manifestations of your own anxieties, given spectral form by the cave's malevolent influence. You continue to press forward, relying on the relic's guidance and your own sheer stubbornness. You focus on your breath, on the solid feel of your armor, on the unyielding purpose that drives you. You remember the oracle's words, the image of Ildoria's rebirth. This mental discipline is crucial. Historically, stoicism and mental fortitude were highly valued traits in warriors, not just brute strength. Facing down inner demons was as important as facing external foes. As you delve deeper, the whispers reach a fever pitch, threatening to overwhelm you. They try to convince you to turn back, to give up, to embrace the quiet despair that has consumed Eldoria. You are just one man, they hiss, a knight without a name, easily forgotten. Your efforts are futile. It's a tempting thought, isn't it? To simply lie down and let the quiet darkness take you. But you resist. You push back. Historians still argue whether the concept of succumbing to despair or melancholia in the medieval period was understood as a spiritual failing or an early recognition of mental health struggles. In these caves, though, it feels like a literal, tangible force, trying to pull you into its suffocating embrace. You clench your jaw, your knuckles white around the relic. You close your eyes for a moment, not to escape, but to refocus. When you open them, the relic flares brighter, its light momentarily pushing back the encroaching shadows and silencing the most aggressive whispers. You are not just enduring, you are fighting back, one step at a time, through the very heart of your own fears. You emerge from the maw of the whispering caves, gasping for the clean, unburdened air of the world above. The oppressive silence of the subterranean realm gives way to the distant call of a hawk and the gentle rustle of leaves, sounds that feel incredibly vibrant after the soul-draining torment of the caves. The relic, still clutched in your hand, pulses with a steady, comforting glow, a silent testament to the internal battle you've just won. You survived your own mental inbox on a Monday morning, congratulations! The sky overhead, though still bruised and tinged with Eldoria's perpetual twilight, seems less menacing, almost hopeful. You look back at the dark entrance of the caves, feeling a profound sense of relief. You faced the tangible manifestations of despair and doubt, and you found a way to push through. It's a powerful realization, sometimes the greatest enemies aren't external forces, but the ones whispering in your own head. Your next destination, the Sky Citadel, is a legend whispered in hushed tones even among the most learned scholars. It's said to be a fortress built by ancient sky mags, a place of impossible architecture, floating among the clouds, a symbol of Eldoria's lost golden age. To reach it, you must ascend the jagged peaks that guard the eastern border of the realm. Historically, tales of floating cities or impossible structures often served as allegories for humanity's aspiration or divine intervention. This citadel, however, feels like a literal, albeit challenging, climb. The journey to the mountain range is a grueling one. The terrain becomes increasingly rugged, the air thinner, and the chill more biting. You climb through desolate passes, over scree-strewn slopes, and along narrow, winding goat paths that cling precariously to sheer cliff faces. The physical exertion is immense, a stark contrast to the psychological battles you've just faced. Your muscles ache, your breath comes in ragged gasps, and your armor feels heavier than ever, a true test of endurance. It's like doing an extreme fitness challenge, but with less comfortable gear and considerably more danger. You notice peculiar rock formations as you ascend, strange, crystalline growths that shimmer faintly in the dim light, catching the relic's glow. These aren't just ordinary rocks, they seem to hum with a subtle, latent energy. A quirky tidbit, some ancient civilizations, like the Celts, believed certain geological formations held mystical properties, often integrating them into their spiritual practices. These rocks feel like the mineral equivalent of cosmic antennae, picking up on the lingering magic in the air. As you gain altitude, the view of Eldoria below you becomes increasingly stark. The blighted lands, the desolate capital, the dark expanse of the sunken city, all are laid bare, a tapestry of ruin. It strengthens your resolve, reaffirming the desperate need for your quest. Historians still argue whether the decline of civilizations is an inevitable cyclical process or a result of specific, avoidable mistakes. From your vantage point, it looks like a kingdom simply ran out of good ideas, or perhaps, good luck. Finally, after days of relentless ascent, you reach the highest peak. The wind howls around you, a fierce, biting gale that threatens to rip your helmet from your head. And there, hovering impossibly in the bruised sky above you, is the Sky Citadel. It's a breathtaking sight, a colossal fortress of gleaming, pale stone, adorned with spires that pierce the clouds. It seems to defy gravity, held aloft by some ancient, forgotten magic. Passageways and bridges connect its various segments, creating a complex, intricate structure that seems to shimmer with its own light. There's no visible entrance, no obvious path from your perilous perch. You look around, the howling wind whipping your cloak. You notice a faint, pulsating light coming from a particularly sheer cliff face across a dizzying chasm. It's a single, narrow beam, like a spotlight on a very exclusive, very dangerous stage. You realize this is your final ascent, a leap of faith across an impossible gap. It's either that or a very long fall, and you didn't climb all this way just to become a medieval pancake. The howling wind on the peak seems to mock your predicament, but the relentless glow of the relic of sundered light offers a peculiar sense of calm. You stare across the dizzying chasm at the single, pulsing light emanating from the cliff face, the only discernible path to the sky citadel. It's a leap of faith, quite literally, but given everything you've faced, a jump across a bottomless pit seems almost quaint. You just hope there isn't a medieval equivalent of an air traffic controller telling you to wait for clearance. You take a running start, the heavy armor surprisingly agile beneath the surge of purpose the relic grants you. As you launch yourself into the void, the light on the cliff face flares, and a shimmering, invisible bridge materializes beneath your feet. It's not solid ground, but rather a walkway of pure, condensed light, vibrating with an ancient magic. Your boots find purchase, and you run across the chasm A. Swirling abyss below, until you reach the base of the sheer cliff face. The light bridge dissipates behind you, leaving you at a massive, ornate entrance carved directly into the rock. It's not just a door, it's a gateway, pulsating with the same energy you felt from the citadel above. You push the massive, glowing doors open, and they swing inward silently, revealing a vast, echoing chamber within the heart of the mountain. Inside, the air is still and sacred, imbued with the ancient magic that sustains the sky citadel. This isn't just a fortress, it's a monument to Eldoria's forgotten glory, a place where the very air hums with power. You begin your ascent through the citadel, following intricate, spiraling passages that seem to wind endlessly upward. The walls are adorned with frescoes depicting the golden age of Eldoria, flying ships, mags harnessing lightning, and a prosperous people living in harmony with the land. It's a poignant contrast to the ruined realm below, a bittersweet reminder of what has been lost. As you climb, you encounter the true guardians of the sky citadel, golems of pure, unblemished stone, brought to life by the citadel's magic. They are massive, silent figures, their forms intricate and powerful. They don't speak, don't threaten, they simply step into your path, blocking your way with implacable resolve. These are not creatures of malice, but of duty, their purpose etched into their stony hearts. Historically, legends of animated statues or constructs appear in various mythologies, often serving as protectors of sacred sites or powerful artifacts. These golems are the ultimate security system, no batteries required. You prepare for battle. The relic in your hand flares, sensing the approaching conflict. The golems, though powerful, are slow, their movements ponderous. You use your agility, dodging their crushing blows, looking for weaknesses in their ancient construction. You notice a curious detail, each golem has a faintly glowing symbol etched into its chest, almost imperceptible. A quirky tidbit, in some ancient magical traditions, a true name or specific symbol was believed to be the key to controlling or disabling a magical construct. This feels like a very similar concept. You don't want to destroy these ancient guardians, merely to pass them. You realize that brute force won't work. This is another test of ingenuity, not just strength. You use the relic's light, focusing its beam directly onto the glowing symbols on the golem's chests. The moment the light touches the symbol, the golem shudders, its glowing eyes dimming, and it slowly, ponderously, becomes inert, turning back into an inanimate statue of stone. It's like finding the off switch on a very large, very grumpy robot. You continue your ascent, disabling golem after golem, until you finally reach the pinnacle of the sky citadel. Here, in the highest chamber, bathed in the perpetual twilight of Eldoria's ailing sky, sits the Shadow King. He is not what you expected. Not a hulking beast, nor a raging sorcerer. He is a figure of utter stillness, cloaked in shadows that seem to absorb all light, even the relics. His throne is not one of gold or jewels, but of twisted, petrified roots, an extension of the blight he has brought upon the realm. Historians still argue whether the most dangerous tyrants were those who ruled with overt cruelty or those who subtly eroded the spirit of their people. The Shadow King embodies the latter, a quiet, insidious evil that feeds on despair. His face, when he turns it slowly towards you, is gaunt, almost skeletal, his eyes pits of pure, consuming darkness. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, but you feel his presence like a suffocating blanket, a chilling wave of pure, absolute despair washing over you. This is it. The end of the line. The air in the Shadow King's chamber is impossibly heavy, thick with the essence of all the despair he has consumed. He doesn't move, yet his presence is a physical force, pressing down on you, trying to crush your spirit. His gaze, those hollow pits of darkness, feels like ice boring into your soul. You clutch the relic, its light the only beacon in the suffocating gloom, the warmth it provides a stark contrast to the chilling malevolence emanating from the throne. It's like being in a room where someone's really bad mood is a tangible entity, and you're just standing there, trying not to catch it. You are but a flicker, the Shadow King's voice finally echoes, not from his lips, but from the very shadows that cloak him, a chorus of whispering despair. A pointless defiance against the inevitable. Hope is a lie, a fleeting illusion that only prolongs suffering. His words are crafted to unravel you, to find the tiny threads of doubt that still linger in your mind, despite the trials you've faced. He's a master manipulator, really. If he wasn't trying to end the world, he'd probably be excellent at selling extended car warranties. You stand firm, the relic pulsating in your hand, its light pushing back against the encroaching darkness. You don't try to engage him in a debate about existential philosophy. You know this is a battle of wills, a clash of opposing forces. You are hope, he is despair. Simple as that, really. Historically, many battles in medieval literature were not just physical clashes but also allegorical struggles between good and evil, light and darkness. This confrontation feels like the ultimate embodiment of that. As the Shadow King speaks, the frescoes on the chamber walls, which once depicted Eldoria's golden age, begin to ripple, distorting into grotesque images of suffering and decay. The glorious flying ships become skeletal carrion birds, the smiling faces contort into masks of agony. It's his power at work, a visual manifestation of the blight he casts upon the realm, designed to break your spirit before you even lift a sword. It's a quirky tidbit, the psychological warfare in this particular apocalypse is really next level. You raise the relic, its light intensifying, pushing back against the distorted imagery. You remember the oracle's words, the fragile sprout pushing through barren earth. You remember the desperate hope in the eyes of the few people you've encountered on this blighted land. You draw on that, on their fading dreams, and channel it through the relic. A beam of pure, radiant light erupts from the relic of sundered light, striking the Shadow King. He doesn't cry out, but the shadows cloaking him recoil, momentarily revealing his form. He is gaunt, almost skeletal, his skin like parchment, his eyes hollow. He's not a king of flesh and blood, but a being sustained by the very despair he cultivates. The light seems to cause him agony, unraveling the very fabric of his being. The battle is not one of sword against shadow, but light against darkness, hope against despair. You press forward, channeling more power into the relic. The Shadow King lets out a silent, internal scream, a sound that vibrates only in your mind, filled with unimaginable pain and fury. He tries to lash out, not with physical blows, but with tendrils of pure despair, seeking to entangle you, to drain you of your will. You feel them brush against your spirit, cold and corrosive, but the relic's warmth pushes them away. Historians still argue whether the concept of evil in medieval thought was seen as an active, malevolent force or simply the absence of good. Here, the Shadow King is undeniably an active, malevolent force, a vacuum of negativity given sentience. You realize that to defeat him, you cannot merely banish him, you must replace his influence with something else. With a final, desperate surge of will, you thrust the relic forward, driving its light directly into the Shadow King's chest. He shudders violently, the shadows around him dissolving into nothingness, revealing the raw, exposed core of his being. It's not a heart, but a vortex of pure, consuming darkness. The relic's light plunges into it, meeting the shadow in a blinding explosion of energy. The Shadow King lets out one last, agonizing, silent scream that seems to echo through the very foundations of the Sky Citadel. His form shatters, not into gore, but into countless motes of shadow that dissipate like smoke, absorbed by the pervasive light. He is gone. Utterly and completely gone, leaving behind only a faint, lingering chill and the overwhelming sense of absence. The silence that follows is profound, pure, and utterly terrifying in its completeness. The oppressive weight lifts, and you gasp for air, the relic still glowing, but now with a softer, more gentle light. The fate of the realm now rests solely in your hands. The overwhelming silence that follows the Shadow King's dissolution is not a void, but a breath. The oppressive weight that had clung to Eldoria for so long, a shroud woven from despair, lifts, not in a sudden explosion, but in a slow, gentle exhalation. The air in the Sky Citadel, once heavy with malice, now feels clean, crisp, almost hopeful. The relic in your hand glows with a soft, steady warmth, its brilliance no longer needing to cut through darkness, but simply existing, a beacon of peace. You survived the end of the world, and all you got was this warm, fuzzy feeling and a really cool crystal. You make your way down from the pinnacle of the Sky Citadel, the path now clear, the once threatening golems standing inert, silent sentinels of a forgotten conflict. The journey back through the mountain, and then through the enchanted forest, is transformed. The forest's whispers are no longer taunts, but gentle murmurs of the wind through leaves, a lullaby of renewal. The illusions have vanished, revealing the true, vibrant beauty of the ancient trees. Even the air here smells sweeter, like fresh rain on ancient earth. It's a remarkable transformation, like someone just turned on the good vibes switch for an entire realm. As you emerge from the forest, the land before you is subtly, undeniably changing. The blight that had withered Eldoria is receding, like a tide going out. The cracked earth shows faint hints of green, tiny, tenacious sprouts pushing through the barren soil. The rivers, which had run black, now shimmer with a clearer, though still muddy, flow. It's not an instantaneous miracle, it's a slow, steady awakening, like a world stirring from a long, troubled sleep. Historically, agricultural renewal after periods of devastation, whether from war or blight, was a slow and painstaking process, requiring immense effort. This magical acceleration is a welcome departure from reality. You continue your journey, your path now clearer, towards what was once the blighted capital. Along the way, you see signs of life that had been absent before. A lone bird, its song fragile but clear, flits between skeletal branches. Small, scurrying creatures, once driven into hiding, emerge cautiously from their burrows. It's a quirky tidbit, how quickly nature begins to reclaim what was lost, almost as if it had simply been holding its breath, waiting for the despair to pass. When you finally reach the capital, it is still a city in ruins, but the decay is no longer absolute. The oppressive mist has dissipated, revealing the scarred but resilient architecture beneath. Sunlight, though still diffused by the distant cloud cover, manages to break through, casting long, gentle shadows. The very air pulses with a nascent energy, a quiet hum of life beginning to return. You notice a faint, almost imperceptible warmth emanating from the stones themselves. You are no longer the lone warrior. From the shadows of the crumbling buildings, tentative figures begin to emerge. They are gaunt, their faces etched with the memory of suffering, but in their eyes, there is a flicker of something new, a fragile, bewildered hope. They see you, the knight without a name, standing there with the relic of sundered light, its soft glow illuminating your presence. They don't know who you are, or where you came from, but they know what you represent. They feel the shift in the air, the lifting of the despair, the promise of a dawn. Historians still argue whether hope is an inherent human quality or a learned response to adversity. Here, in Eldoria, you see it as a tangible, almost palpable force, returning to a people who had forgotten its very meaning. You don't speak, you don't need to. You simply stand there, a silent anchor in a realm reawakening. The journey is far from over, the healing of Eldoria will take generations. But the first seed of hope has been planted, the first whisper of light has touched the dying realm. And you, the knight without a name, have fulfilled your purpose. The sun, as if responding to the new promise in the air, begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gentle purple and soft orange. The light softens, the air grows still. The story of the knight without a name fades, not into oblivion, but into the quiet, burgeoning promise of a new tomorrow. You feel the weariness in your bones, a deep, satisfying exhaustion that signals the end of a long, arduous quest. The distant whispers of the reawakening realm become softer, calmer, blending into the quiet hum of the night. Now, as the last echoes of Eldoria's silent struggle fade into the past, allow your own journey to soften, to slow. Feel the gentle warmth of your blankets, the comforting whisper of the air around you. The world outside is settling, just as Eldoria is slowly finding its peace. Let your breath deepen, your mind clear. There are no more quests tonight, no more battles to fight. Only the quiet promise of rest, a soft embrace after a long adventure. Drift now, as the realm drifts towards its own gentle dawn, and know that you, too, are safe and cared for.